The quiet tension of a summer afternoon in Chicago's South Side shattered when two patrol cars screeched to a halt, red and blue lights spinning wildly against brick walls. A middle-aged black woman named Bethany Harrison stepped onto her porch, shielding her eyes from the glare, unaware her life was about to spiral into chaos. She'd spent years working for her community, never seeking attention, yet here she was confronting suspicious officers with guns at their hips and questions on their tongues. Little did these cops know Bethany's greatest aid was just a phone call away. Her daughter, Leonie Harrison, a clandestine legend of the CIA, whose name reverberated through the halls of Langley. A sweltering July sun beat down on the cracked sidewalks of Chicago's South Side. Heat shimmered in the distance, the air thick with the fumes of traffic and the smoky aroma of barbecue stands pressed between old brick buildings. For Bethany Harrison, life had always been steeped in resilience. She was 52 years old with careful eyes that had witnessed both hardship and joy, and a warm smile she reserved for people she trusted. She lived in a modest two-story house on 71st Street, surrounded by tall iron fences and battered old row homes. The yard was small, just enough space for a few rose bushes and a gnarled oak tree that had stood watch for decades. Bethany cherished the tree. It reminded her of the roots she'd planted in this neighborhood. She had lost her husband to cancer 8 years ago, and though it had been a crushing blow, she refused to crumble. Her daughter Leonie had been off at university, and eventually Bethany learned, in the CIA. So Bethany had shouldered the responsibilities at home all by herself. That day Bethany was out on the porch fanning herself with the morning newspaper. Headlines about city corruption scrolled across the front page, but Bethany had grown indifferent to sensational news. She had real-world challenges to handle. A community center that needed an urgent donation, a Sunday school program in dire need of volunteers, and her own daily routine of making ends meet. She thought the day would pass quietly, heat wave notwithstanding, but everything changed when the screech of brakes shattered her moment of calm. Two police cruisers, engines roaring, pulled up on the opposite curb. Their sirens went silent, replaced by the nervous energy of men stepping out. Her heartbeat quickened. She'd seen enough in her community to know that nothing good emerged from two cop cars arriving at once with sirens blazing. She watched from her porch, a sinking feeling in her stomach. For officers moved in tandem, scanning the street like they were searching for someone or something. Bethany's heart thumped behind her ribs. She had no reason to be alarmed personally. She kept her record clean and her property in order, but this was Chicago, a city known for friction between law enforcement and its black residents. An uneasy hush settled on the block as neighbors peeked from behind curtains or parted blinds, waiting to see what might happen next. One of the officers, a tall man with an angular jaw and a hardened gaze, stepped onto Bethany's sidewalk. His nameplate read Mr. Carson. Bethany's eyes flicked to the piece of metal pinned to his chest as he neared. He tilted his head slightly as though sizing her up. "Ma'am, do you live here?" he asked, voice taut. Bethany nodded. "Yes, officer, I do. Is there a problem?" Behind Mr. Carson stood another cop, Officer Hill, a stocky woman with dark, intense eyes. She said nothing, but Bethany felt her stare burn into her like she was already guilty of something. The other two officers hovered by the police vehicles, hands on their belts, occasionally glancing toward Bethany's house. Mr. Carson pulled out a small notepad. "We got a call about suspicious activity in this area," he began. "Could you tell us if you've noticed anything unusual today?" Bethany's forehead creased. "Suspicious? I've been on this porch most of the day. Nothing unusual that I could see." Mr. Carson looked unconvinced. There was a long pause pregnant with tension. Neighbors across the street had ventured onto their own porches, but none dared approach. Bethany's heart hammered. She tried to keep her voice even. "I've been living here for nearly 3 decades, she said, hoping to express her sense of belonging. "I keep an eye on the block, and I've seen nothing out of the ordinary." Officer Hill finally spoke. "We received a report about a woman fitting your description involved in some kind of—" She paused, glancing at Mr. Carson, "possible drug-related exchange." The accusation made Bethany's jaw drop. She felt her cheeks burn. "Drug-related exchange? Officer, you must have the wrong person." Mr. Carson clicked his pen aggressively. "We're just following up on a call, ma'am. You have ID on you." Bethany produced her driver's license with trembling hands. The officer examined it before handing it to Hill, who inspected the card as if searching for some discrepancy. The radio on Carson's shoulder crackled with static, but there was no new information. Bethany's mind raced. Who could have made such a baseless report? We might need to search the premises, Mr. Carson said, just to ensure everything's clear. Bethany's anger flared, cutting through her fear. Search my home? Officer, you need a warrant for that. Mr. Carson and Hill exchanged a glance. They knew she was right. Hill turned away, speaking quietly into her radio, likely checking Bethany's records. Bethany tried to swallow her frustration, but the tension was suffocating. How about we step inside to talk? Mr. Carson suggested. If you cooperate, we can clear this up more quickly. Bethany stiffened. With all due respect, I'm not comfortable letting you in without the proper documents. Mr. Carson's jaw clenched. Hill's eyes narrowed. For a moment, Bethany thought they'd force their way in. She braced herself mentally for a confrontation. But Mr. Carson simply exhaled, the corner of his mouth twitching in annoyance. Fine, he said, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back. They turned and walked away. Bethany stood rooted to the spot, her chest rising and falling in uneven breaths as they regrouped by their vehicles. The neighbors slowly retreated indoors, suspecting this was far from over. Bethany's mind still reeled with the sheer impossibility of the accusation. She could have called the police station to file a complaint, but she hesitated. If they were going to come back, maybe she could handle it calmly, but a second thought intruded. What if they actually come back with a warrant? What if someone set me up? In the pit of her stomach, a flicker of dread swirled. Bethany's mind turned to her daughter, Leonie. What if I need help? Bethany wondered. Should I call her? But she dismissed the idea just as quickly as it came. For one, Bethany didn't want to worry Leonie, who seemed always to be off on some hush-hush assignment. Besides, Bethany had survived a lifetime in this community. She wasn't some helpless victim. She could handle herself, or so she convinced herself. Miles away in a restricted government facility just outside Langley, Virginia, Leonie Harrison sat in a secure briefing room scanning through multiple screens of classified data. She was 30 years old, slender but athletic, and she exuded a calm confidence few could match. Rumors floated in the CIA's corridors about her legendary operations overseas. Some said she had infiltrated a dangerous cartel in South America. Others claimed she took part in a top-secret mission in Eastern Europe that the agency would deny ever happened. Officially, she was an intelligence analyst, but nearly everyone who worked with her knew she was more than that. A field operative who had proven her skill set time and again. The name Leonie Harrison had quickly become synonymous with reliability, brilliance, and nerve under pressure. Trained at Camp Peary, known colloquially as the Farm, Leonie had displayed an innate knack for languages and tactical maneuvers. Her achievements had caught the attention of senior officials, including Deputy Director Owen Bryce, who once publicly praised her in a classified meeting. If the CIA had more operatives like Agent Harrison, this country would sleep a lot easier. But behind her dazzling record, Leonie wrestled with the guilt of a double life. She yearned to be closer to her mother in Chicago. She called Bethany whenever she got the chance, but her missions often kept her away for extended periods, sometimes without communication. Bethany only knew that her daughter worked for the government, with vague hints at the intelligence community, but not the full scope of her exploits. Leonie had to keep Bethany safe, keep the details secret. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unlisted number. Usually that meant internal agency communications. This time, however, she recognized the contact. Her mother. The text message read, "Something strange happened today. The police came, said I matched a description in some drug-related call. They threatened to come back with a warrant. Just wanted you to know I'm fine, but it's unsettling." Leonie felt her pulse accelerate. She had known Bethany to handle adversity on her own. Her mother had faced plenty of storms in life, raising Leonie as a single parent after her father died. If Bethany felt the need to text, it meant the situation weighed on her. Leonie tapped out a quick reply. "Are you okay? Do you need me?" The response came minutes later. "I'm okay for now. Take care of yourself. We'll keep you posted. Love you." Leonie exhaled, forcing herself to remain calm. She had a briefing to attend, but the message tugged at her. A sliver of a voice in her head whispered, "Go home. Something's off." But Leonie was in the middle of analyzing a high-profile intelligence file on foreign infiltration attempts, something that demanded her immediate attention. She closed her eyes, refocused, and told herself that Bethany could handle a simple run-in with the cops. Yet an uneasy knot formed in her stomach. Back in Chicago, Bethany went about her day in a state of heightened alert. She avoided talking to neighbors, not wanting to stir up more rumors. She had done nothing wrong, and the idea that the police might return with a warrant seemed absurd. Still, the fear gnawed at her. What if the cops had some fabricated evidence? She'd heard too many stories about how easily lives could be upended by a single false accusation. 2 days passed quietly. No officers appeared. Bethany began to relax, hoping that whatever tip they received had been discredited. On Wednesday morning, she decided to run errands, a quick stop at the grocery store, then the pharmacy. After locking up the house, she walked down the block, greeting a few familiar faces, yet the calm was short-lived. Halfway down the street, a cruiser idled by the curb. It was Mr. Carson and Hill again. They emerged from the car as soon as they spotted Bethany, their presence oppressive beneath the punishing sun. "Good morning," Bethany said, trying for politeness, though her unease was evident in her voice. Mr. Carson wasted no time. "We need to ask you a few more questions. Could you come with us?" Bethany's stomach clenched. "Am I under arrest?" she asked, keeping her voice as steady as possible. "No," Hill replied curtly. "We just need you to come down to the station to clear some things up. Cooperation will work in your favor." Bethany glanced around, noticing that the few neighbors out on their porches had stopped talking to watch. She weighed her options. If she refused, would it escalate the situation? If she complied, would they twist her words? She decided to remain composed, mindful of her rights. "I'll answer questions here," she said resolutely. "If I'm not under arrest, I see no reason to go to the station." Mr. Carson's face twitched in annoyance. "Look, we're trying to cut you a break. We just have some questions about a suspicious package supposedly delivered to your address. If you want to talk here, we can, but it would be easier at the station." Bethany blinked. Suspicious package? She thought about all the packages she'd received lately. A garden hose from Amazon, a new set of curtains, some vitamins, nothing out of the ordinary. She told them as much. Hill tapped her foot, impatience radiating off her. "Doesn't ring a bell," Bethany said, crossing her arms. "What exactly do you think was delivered?" Mr. Carson shrugged. "We got a tip that a large shipment of narcotics was dropped at your door a few weeks back. There's an ongoing investigation involving your address." Bethany felt her frustration surge. "That's ridiculous. I've never seen or heard of anything like that." Hill took a step closer, and Bethany flinched. The officer's voice lowered. "Sometimes people get roped into things they don't understand, Miss Harrison. We're trying to help. If you're innocent, talking to us is your best route." A swirl of anger, fear, and confusion twisted inside Bethany. She wanted to scream. "I'm being framed. This has to be some mistake." But she just shook her head. "I have nothing to hide, but I also know my rights." "Are you arresting me?" A tense silence followed. Mr. Carson exhaled in frustration. "Fine. We'll continue our investigation. Don't leave town." Bethany watched them retreat to their cruiser, relief warring with anger. She quickly canceled her errands and hurried back to her house, every instinct screaming that something was horribly amiss. That night, Bethany woke at around 2 a.m. to a sound outside like metal clanking against her fence. Her heart jolted. She slipped on her robe, crept downstairs, and peeked out the window. Under the dim glow of a single street light, a figure skulked near her trash cans, their breathing shallow. Bethany reached for her phone. She dialed 911 automatically, but paused before pressing call. She hesitated because she didn't trust the police right now. Still, this was someone trespassing on her property. She pressed the call button. 911, what's your emergency? A dispatch operator's voice said. "There's someone outside my house," Bethany whispered. "They're messing with my trash or my fence. I need help." The operator assured her that a patrol would arrive shortly. Bethany watched the figure from behind curtains. Whoever it was had a hood over their head, rummaging near the fence line. Could it be someone planting evidence? Fear jolted through her. She'd heard stories of unscrupulous cops or criminals doing exactly that. Within minutes, a squad car arrived. 2 officers, neither of them Mr. Carson nor Hill, stepped out. They shone flashlights at the intruder, who darted into the darkness behind the house. The officers gave chase, but Bethany doubted they'd catch him in the labyrinth of back alleys. Moments later, they returned out of breath. "Ma'am," one officer said, "it appears the suspect fled." We didn't find anyone. Bethany explained the situation, her suspicion that the cops had singled her out. The officers exchanged uncertain glances. They suggested Bethany install security cameras and keep a watchful eye. That was all they could do. Despite everything, Bethany thanked them, locked her doors, and tried to go back to sleep, but sleep didn't come easily. She tossed and turned, replaying the figure's appearance in her mind. Why would anyone tamper with her property in the middle of the night? Paranoia gnawed at her. This could be connected to the false narcotics allegations. She thought about calling Leone again, but it was already past 2 a.m. in Chicago, and Leone might be in a different time zone if she was on a mission. Bethany decided to wait until morning, though every minute felt like a countdown to an impending disaster. 800 miles away in Langley, Leone was jolted awake by a call from Bethany. She normally kept her personal phone on silent, but she had changed the settings after the odd text from her mother. She answered, "Groggy, Mom?" She heard Bethany's shaky voice. "Baby, I'm so sorry to call you like this, but something weird is going on. The police keep harassing me about some drug shipment, and last night someone was in our yard." Leone sat up in bed, adrenaline surging. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Bethany said, though tears threatened to break her composure. "I just don't know what to do anymore. I'm scared they're trying to set me up." Leone closed her eyes, mind racing. She wanted to reassure Bethany, but every fiber in her body told her she needed to intervene. "Mom, stay calm. I'll be there as soon as I can." Bethany started to protest. "But your job." "Don't worry about my job," Leone interrupted, voice firm. "There's nothing more important than you right now." They ended the call. Leone switched on a bedside lamp and stared at the Spartan walls of her apartment. A half-packed go bag sat in her closet, something she always had ready in case of an unexpected assignment. Within an hour, she'd informed her superior, Deputy Director Bryce, that she had a family emergency. Bryce, who had always been supportive of Leone's unwavering commitment to the agency, granted her leave without prying for specifics. 3 hours later, Leone boarded a flight from Washington, D.C. to Chicago, her mind fixated on Bethany's plight. She had faced terrorists, arms dealers, and corrupt politicians, but the idea of her mother being harassed by law enforcement struck an entirely different chord, a personal one. She resolved that if the Chicago PD was stepping on Bethany's rights, Leone would not let that slide. And if there was some deeper plot at play, well, Leone had her own ways of uncovering the truth. She texted Bethany not to pick her up. A dear friend owed Leone a favor and agreed to lend her a car. Leone drove through the quiet pre-rush hour streets, wrestling with the rush of memories from her childhood. The bus rides to school, summer afternoons playing double dutch with friends on the sidewalk, her mother waiting for her on the porch with a pitcher of sweet iced tea. Arriving at Bethany's house, she parked discreetly around the corner, no need to draw attention, with an out-of-state rental in front of the house. She noticed a black SUV stationed down the block. Instinct prickled. An unmarked police vehicle, or something else. Inside the house, Bethany enveloped Leone in a hug so tight it felt like she might never let go. Leone noticed Bethany's trembling hands. She tried to exude a calm confidence to soothe her mother. They sat at the kitchen table, the early sunlight painting the walls a soft gold. Bethany recounted the harassment, the break-in attempt, everything. Leone listened, face impassive, thoughts churning. When Bethany finished, Leone nodded. "I believe you," she said quietly. "This doesn't feel random. I'm worried there's more going on here." Bethany's eyes were moist. "But why me? I've never done anything." Leone placed a comforting hand on hers. "We'll find out. For now, I need you to stay inside, keep the doors locked. If the police show up again, call me right away. I'll be nearby." Bethany nodded. She asked the question that had weighed on her for years. "Leone, what is it you really do for the government?" Leone paused, debating how much to reveal. "Mom, I'm with the CIA," she said, her words slow, deliberate. "I can't give you all the details, but I promise you, I'm able to protect you." Bethany's eyes widened. She had suspected something like that, but hearing it confirmed felt surreal. She reached out, touching Leone's cheek. "My baby girl," she whispered, half in awe, half in concern. "Just be careful. We can handle this together, but I don't want you risking your career." Leone pulled Bethany into another hug. "Don't worry about me, Mom. Let me worry about you." Over the next few days, Leone established a discreet surveillance routine. She installed small cameras around the property, untraceable devices she'd acquired through her CIA connections. She set up motion detectors at the back fence and near the front porch. She also took note of the black SUV that occasionally parked on the block. Some days it was there, some days it wasn't. Leone memorized the license plate number, ran it through a confidential database, and found it registered to a local private security firm that had questionable ties to city officials. The puzzle pieces continued to shift. Meanwhile, Bethany did her best to maintain normalcy. She attended church on Sunday, helped organize a charity bake sale, and tried not to let her anxiety show, but each time she stepped outside, she felt eyes on her. Maybe it was just paranoia, maybe not. One morning, as Leone monitored the surveillance footage from her laptop, she caught a glimpse of someone at Bethany's back fence. The angle was poor, but the figure appeared to be rummaging near the trash cans again. The timestamp read 3:12 a.m. The motion sensors had alerted Leone's phone, but she'd been reviewing it after the fact. No vehicle had approached from the alley. That meant the person was on foot, possibly local, or had parked far away to avoid detection. Leone showed the footage to Bethany. "This is at least the second time someone's poked around back here," Leone said. "Whatever they're looking for, it's no good." Bethany's lips pressed tight. What are they trying to plant or retrieve? Leone considered the possibilities. Either they're trying to place something incriminating on the property, or they're searching for something. The key is, why your house? Who stands to gain from framing you? Bethany shook her head helplessly. "I've done nothing to anyone. My activism is minimal, just church programs, community outreach, that sort of thing. Nobody would see me as a threat." A thought occurred to Leone. Could it be about me? Maybe some foreign entity had discovered Bethany's connection to a top CIA operative and was trying to manipulate or blackmail her. The prospect made Leone's blood run cold. She decided she needed more data, fast. She enlisted the help of a trusted contact at the CIA, a cybersecurity specialist named Martin Xavier, who owed her a favor. She provided him with the partial data they had: the suspicious calls from Bethany's block, the black SUV's license plate, the timestamps of the intruder. She hoped Xavier could cross-reference local law enforcement channels, any official who might be using city resources for personal gain, or suspicious patterns that matched Bethany's harassment. 3 days later, Xavier called. His voice crackled over Leone's secure phone. "Leone, I don't have solid proof yet, but there's a name coming up often in local police logs and private security rosters: Sergeant Dean Carson. He seems to have a side gig with that security firm that owns the black SUV. Carson has flagged Bethany's house more than once in official communications, citing anonymous tips. However, I can't find any legitimate tipster in the system. It's like these tips were invented." Leone's stomach turned. "You're saying Carson is behind these false reports?" "It looks that way. No direct evidence tying him to the intrusions, but the pattern is suspicious. He's also in the orbit of a local real estate developer named Gavin Dupree, who's been snapping up properties in your mother's neighborhood. Could be a land grab scheme." Leone remembered Bethany's modest but well-located property, a prime spot especially if the city was planning future developments. If Bethany refused to sell, maybe they aimed to scare her out or force a foreclosure with a criminal charge. The entire scenario made Leone's blood boil. She thanked Xavier and hung up. The plan crystallized in her mind. She would confront Carson, but first she needed undeniable evidence. Leone orchestrated a trap to lure the intruder back. She convinced Bethany to place a large sealed box by the back fence labeled with a fake shipping label that hinted at something valuable, like electronic components, a cover that might interest someone trying to frame Bethany for receiving contraband. Leone positioned a hidden camera inside the box, rigged to capture clear footage of whoever opened it. For days, nothing happened. Bethany grew restless. Leone stood guard in Bethany's living room with a pair of binoculars and her laptop, streaming the camera feeds. The nights dragged, but they stayed vigilant. Then, on the 5th night, the motion sensor pinged at 2:47 a.m. Leone, fully dressed in black leggings and a dark hoodie, slipped out the back door quietly, positioning herself behind the thick trunk of Bethany's old oak tree. She held a small night vision camera, courtesy of her agency kit, ready to film from ground level. Adrenaline coursed through her veins. A figure approached the fence, the same silhouette from the earlier footage. The person wore a hooded sweatshirt, gloves, and carried a small flashlight. Leone watched as the intruder knelt by the planted package. A faint rustling sound carried on the night air. The intruder peeled the tape from the box carefully. Leonie zoomed in with her camera capturing every detail. Within a minute, the intruder seemed to realize the box was mostly empty, except for the hidden camera which was concealed behind cardboard. The figure cursed under their breath. They turned to leave, but froze at the sight of Leonie stepping into view, phone camera also recording. "Stop," Leonie commanded, her voice a measured whisper. The intruder bolted. Leonie took off in pursuit. They raced down the alley, vaulting over trash cans. The intruder was fast, but Leonie was fueled by training and fury, her footfalls echoing off the brick walls. 2 blocks later, the intruder miscalculated a fence jump and fell hard. Leonie closed in. She pinned them, pressing a knee to their back. With a swift motion, she yanked down the hood, revealing a young man with wide, panicked eyes. He looked barely in his 20s. "Please," he gasped. I was paid to drop something off." Leonie's mind reeled. "By who?" The young man, panting, glanced around nervously as though expecting the shadows to swallow him. "They told me if I put these packets in some people's yards I'd get a cut of whatever. I don't even know them. Some guy who wore a badge, but I never got his name, I swear." Leonie's anger blazed. A badge? Carson, or one of his cronies. She wanted to haul this guy in, but she also knew that involving the cops might lead to more corruption. Instead, she forced him to unlock his phone. The trembling man complied, and Leonie quickly forwarded the text messages to her own secure address. The messages mentioned times, places, and partial details of the operation. A repeated phone number was included, likely Carson or a middleman. "Get out of here," she finally snapped, releasing him. He stumbled to his feet and bolted, his footsteps echoing in the night. Leonie let him go. With the data in her phone, she could confirm who orchestrated these nocturnal visits. She walked back to Bethany's house, chest heaving, her mind steeled with resolve. "Now we know this is definitely a setup," she thought. But who exactly was giving the orders? Carson was the prime suspect, but if there were bigger players like Gavin Dupree, Leonie intended to expose them too. One thing was certain, Bethany was not safe until she and Leonie got these people off her back. The next morning, Leonie sifted through the intruder's text messages. There were cryptic instructions, locations, times, envelopes of cash left under a bench near Jackson Park. The messages came from a burner phone. Leonie used her CIA resources to trace the phone's purchase to an electronic shop just outside Chicago. Security footage from that shop revealed a man in uniform buying a set of burner phones, one of which matched the intruder's. The man's back was to the camera, but the build and posture suggested Carson. Digging deeper, Leonie discovered that Carson had a close connection to Gavin Dupree. Dupree was a real estate magnate known for turning low-income neighborhoods into luxury developments. He often used shady methods, pressure tactics, false eviction notices, or code violations to push residents out. With Bethany's property sitting on a prime corner lot, it was easy to see the motive. Leonie pieced together the scheme. Carson would harass Bethany, planting false evidence of drug involvement or other criminal activity. Under duress, Bethany might be forced to sell her house at a fraction of its value. Dupree would swoop in, buy it cheap, and profit from a new development. It was an old story repeated in countless neighborhoods, but this time they picked the wrong family. But how to expose them effectively? Leonie's CIA training included infiltration and black operations, but this was the American home front. She needed to be strategic. A direct confrontation might tip them off, allowing them to destroy evidence. Leonie knew she had to gather indisputable proof. She also knew some good cops in Chicago, old family friends or acquaintances, could help if they were approached carefully. Leonie reached out to Detective Nadia Hendricks, an old high school classmate who had joined the Chicago PD out of a genuine desire to protect her community. They had lost touch over the years, but Leonie kept track of Nadia's commendations. Nadia had risen quickly to detective, known for her integrity and refusal to bend to political pressure. They met in a quiet diner near Bronzeville, out of uniform for Nadia, and Leonie dressed in a casual jacket over mugs of coffee. Leonie laid out the situation carefully, omitting her CIA affiliations. Nadia listened, eyes widening as Leonie showed her the text messages and the partial footage of Carson's possible involvement. "This is serious, Leonie. Carson is well-connected," Nadia said grimly. "He's got friends in high places. If Dupree's involved, they could bury this." Leonie's jaw clenched. "Not if we bring irrefutable evidence to an independent authority," Maybe the FBI or the Inspector General. But first I need your help confirming any official complaints or internal investigations into Carson, something that can tie him to corruption. Nadia nodded, her expression resolute. Let me dig through the PD's internal affairs files. But be careful. If Carson catches wind, it could get dangerous. Leonie forced a smile. Thank you. I owe you one. They parted ways, each aware that a quiet war was brewing. Leonie returned to Bethany's house and briefed her mother. Bethany's expression revealed a mixture of relief and anxiety. She was glad someone honest in the Chicago PD was on their side, but the idea of tangling with powerful men like Carson and Dupree terrified her. Yet Bethany found courage in Leonie's unwavering gaze. She saw not just her daughter, but the strong, capable woman she had become, a professional who had stared down threats far more sinister than crooked cops, and Bethany realized something else. She wasn't alone. Days passed, and Bethany tried to maintain her regular routine, albeit under intense scrutiny from Leonie. Late one afternoon, Bethany was in her living room watching the local news while Leonie hovered in the background, sifting through intelligence from Xavier. Without warning, they heard the roar of engines outside. Leonie's phone buzzed. She checked the surveillance feed. 3 squad cars, lights flashing, swarmed onto the street. Officers poured out, guns drawn. A voice boomed through a megaphone. Bethany Harrison, we have a warrant to search your premises. Come out with your hands where we can see them. Bethany froze, terror creeping up her spine. Leonie rushed to the window, her gut twisting. Stay calm, she whispered. Let me do the talking. They stepped outside, hands up. Leonie's arms raised too. The sight was surreal. Neighbors stood on their porches again, phones recording. At the forefront of the police line was Carson, his face set in grim satisfaction. Hill stood beside him, smirking. A swirl of dread enveloped Bethany. We have a warrant, Carson repeated, thrusting a piece of paper in the air. We have reason to believe illegal substances are stored on this property. This is a false warrant. Leonie snapped, her adrenaline raging. There are no illegal substances here. Carson waved his men forward. Bethany's eyes brimmed with tears, a mixture of fear and fury. They streamed past Leonie and Bethany, guns drawn, rummaging through the rooms. Leonie knew they might have planted something already. This entire show was premeditated, but Bethany had a quiet trump card. The surveillance cameras they'd installed in every corner, including body cam level vantage points disguised in ordinary household objects. As the officers searched, Leonie prayed that they wouldn't discover and destroy the cameras. 15 minutes later, Carson emerged from Bethany's bedroom triumphantly, holding a small bag of white powder. Bethany's heart dropped. She had never seen it before. She couldn't even guess what it was, but it was definitely not hers. Carson raised it for all to see. Cocaine, he declared, eyes gleaming. Miss Harrison, you're under arrest. Bethany started to protest, tears falling. That's not mine. I've never. Leonie's mind whirred. She had to keep calm. She had the entire scene on video, including Carson entering the bedroom empty-handed and leaving with the evidence. Let them think they've won for now, her instincts roared. To reveal her CIA credentials might not stop the immediate arrest. The Chicago PD could claim a chain of custody for the drugs and hold Bethany in custody until charges were sorted out, the ugliness of corruption laid bare. Still, Bethany was cuffed, tears streaking her cheeks. Carson read her Miranda rights with smug formality. Hill's expression was unreadable, but her eyes burned with a cold light. Leonie's fists shook at her sides, but she allowed them to take Bethany. If she fought back physically, they'd brand her a violent suspect instead. She turned to Carson, her voice steady but icy. This is a mistake, she said. I'm going to prove you set her up, and when I do, you'll regret ever stepping foot on this property. Carson sneered. I'm just doing my job. If your mother's innocent, she'll be cleared in court. He escorted Bethany to the squad car. Neighbors watched in horror, some shouting protests. Leonie recorded every second on her phone, capturing the twisted spectacle. Her mind raced with possibilities. I have to free my mother. I have the proof of this framed job. I just need to present it to someone who will act on it. She clutched her phone like a lifeline. That night, Bethany spent the first hours of her detention in a holding cell at the local precinct. Leonie was denied immediate access. The desk sergeant claimed it was procedure. Leonie recognized the stalling tactic. She tried phoning Nadia Hendricks, praying her friend could expedite Bethany's release. Nadia answered in a hushed tone. Leonie, I'm working on it. Nadia said. I've already spoken to Internal Affairs, but they're worried about blowback. Carson has powerful allies. We need indisputable evidence that Bethany was framed. I have it, Leonie replied, her voice trembling with urgency. She explained about the hidden surveillance cameras in Bethany's house. Nadia told her to hold tight. Within an hour, Nadia arrived with a pair of IIA investigators. Leonie handed them the footage from the bedroom camera, which clearly showed Carson planting the bag of powder. One of the investigators, a stern man with a streak of gray in his hair, watched it twice, eyes widening. This is damning, he muttered. I can't believe Carson was so sloppy. Leonie scowled. He wasn't sloppy. He never expected we'd have hidden cameras. Nadia nodded. Once we show this to the right people, Bethany will be released. We can open a formal corruption case against Carson. This might blow open the whole ring. Relief flooded Leonie. She took a moment to breathe, heart pounding from the stress of the day. Please hurry, she pleaded. My mother doesn't deserve a second in that cell. By midnight, Bethany was released on her own recognizance. She stepped out of the station, eyes red from hours of tears, shoulders slumped. Leonie hugged her tightly, tears of relief choking her words. We have the evidence, Mom. You're free for now. They returned home under the watchful eyes of neighbors who cheered Bethany's release. Bethany mustered a shaky smile, but she was exhausted. Leonie promised her that it wasn't over. They still needed to bring Carson and Dupree to justice. The next day, the Internal Affairs Division moved swiftly, faster than Leonie had dared hope. The video evidence of Carson planting drugs was too explicit for cover-ups or endless bureaucracy. IIA officers arrested Carson at the precinct. News spread like wildfire through the local media. Chicago cop accused of planting evidence. Shocking video emerges. Journalists swarmed the station for details. Carson, stewing in a holding cell, was rumored to be shouting about entrapment and fabricated videos, but his credibility was shattered. Nadia also handed over records showing Carson's secondary employment with Dupree's security firm and suspicious bank deposits that pointed to bribes or payoffs. Gavin Dupree, for his part, tried to distance himself from Carson as the scandal broke. He issued a statement denying any involvement and calling Carson a rogue officer. Yet Leonie's friend Xavier continued digging. He unearthed emails from Dupree's corporate account referencing Bethany's address and the need to remove the occupant by any means necessary. This was the smoking gun. Within days, Dupree faced arrest on conspiracy charges. The FBI joined the case, zeroing in on a network of property fraud that extended beyond Bethany's neighborhood. Bethany's face appeared in local news segments as a victim of systemic corruption. Protesters rallied outside City Hall demanding reforms and praising Bethany's courage. The national conversation about police overreach and real estate corruption gained a new focal point: Bethany Harrison's story. Through it all, Bethany leaned on Leonie. Even as Bethany's name was cleared, a swirl of emotions engulfed her: relief, anger, a sense of violation. She had come too close to losing everything, but now the very system that once threatened her was forced to reckon with its own corruption. Amid the media frenzy, Bethany was asked for interviews on local television. At first, she was reluctant. She'd never wanted the spotlight, but her pastor and members of the community center encouraged her to share her story to inspire others who might be facing similar battles. To Bethany's surprise, Leonie joined her on one of the news segments. The anchor introduced them as a mother-daughter duo who overcame corruption. Toward the end, the anchor asked Leonie, "You were instrumental in gathering evidence. Do you work in law enforcement?" Leonie exchanged a look with Bethany with a soft nod from her mother. Leonie admitted, "I work for a federal agency, yes. My training helped me spot the setup." She left it at that. The anchor, intrigued, pushed for details, but Leonie politely declined. Off camera, Bethany smiled, aware now more than ever of Leonie's role in a much larger world. Word trickled through local circles that Bethany's daughter was more than just an analyst. A wave of rumors followed. Some people claimed Leonie was a top CIA operative with high-level clearances who had participated in covert missions. To Bethany's amusement, some stories made Leonie sound like a modern-day James Bond, but Bethany simply told her friends, "I just know she's my baby who will do anything to protect me." The final court hearing unfolded in a packed courtroom. Carson, Dupree, and a handful of their associates were charged with conspiracy, racketeering, and evidence tampering, among other offenses. Bethany sat in the gallery holding Leonie's hand. When Carson took the stand, he tried to deny planting evidence claiming the video was altered, but forensic experts confirmed its authenticity. He then tried to claim Bethany was a secret drug lord, a notion so absurd that the jury visibly scoffed. Dupree's defense tried to spin his involvement as corporate management ignorance, but the incriminating emails told a different story. In the end, the judge pronounced them guilty on multiple counts. Carson glared at Bethany and Leonie, hatred burning in his eyes, as bailiffs led him away. Dupree hung his head, the once powerful mogul reduced to a disgraced criminal. The gallery erupted in quiet relief. Justice, for once, had been served. With the trial concluded, Bethany's name cleared, and the corrupt network dismantled. Life gradually returned to normal, though not quite the same as before. Bethany was hailed a local hero, an emblem of resistance against systemic injustice. She received countless messages from strangers thanking her for shining a light on corruption. The city even offered her compensation for emotional distress and legal fees, which she used to revitalize the community center she loved so much. Leonie, having taken extended leave from her duties, prepared to return to Langley. She and Bethany spent a final week together, cherishing each moment. Bethany, having grown used to Leonie's presence, felt a pang of sadness at their impending separation, but also a swelling pride. She knew Leonie had a calling that went beyond personal desire. It was about protecting the nation. On their last night together, they sat on the porch sipping sweet tea under the glow of a street light. The old oak tree rustled in the breeze, as if sighing in relief. Bethany turned to Leonie. "Thank you for everything. I still can't believe what we've been through." Leonie reached for her mother's hand. "You raised me to fight for what's right. Don't thank me. I'm just following your lead." Bethany laughed softly, tears shining at the corners of her eyes. "And here I thought you were just a quiet girl who liked reading spy novels." Leonie smiled. "Maybe that's where I got the idea." They fell into a companionable silence, each grateful for the other. The day came for Leonie to return to Virginia. Standing at the airport drop-off curb, Bethany hugged her daughter fiercely. "Remember," Bethany said, "this will always be your home. Anytime you need to come back, come back." Leonie's voice was gentle but firm. "I will, Mom. And if you need me, if anyone tries to mess with you, you call, and I'll be on the next flight." Bethany nodded, her heart brimming with love. She stepped back and watched Leonie disappear into the terminal, a silhouette of strength and determination. The mother-daughter bond, already strong, had been forged into steel by this ordeal. Back home, Bethany felt the weight of the past few weeks lift from her shoulders. She walked through her neighborhood, greeted by people waving from their porches, children playing in the street with a renewed sense of safety. She breathed in the city air, tinged with the faint scent of summer flowers and the promise of change. In a small ceremony at the community center, Bethany cut the ribbon for a new wing dedicated to legal aid and community development, funded in part by the city's compensation and private donations after her story went public. The crowd applauded, many recognizing her as the woman who had stood up against corruption and won. Behind the scenes, the city council initiated new oversight measures for the Chicago PD, seeking to restore community trust. Real estate developers, once aligned with Dupree, distanced themselves, shifting focus to legitimate projects or leaving the market altogether. The ripple effects of Bethany's case swept through the city, inspiring others to demand accountability. And somewhere in a classified corridor of the CIA, Leonie Harrison's name carried an even stronger resonance. She was not just an elite operative. She was the woman who had single-handedly taken on a corrupt Chicago network to protect her mother, proving that her loyalties ran deeper than any official mission. Her reputation within the agency soared, and though most would never know the full story, whispered respect followed her footsteps. In the end, Bethany and Leonie's bond emerged unbreakable from the fire, a testament to the power of love, resilience, and justice. Every time Bethany stepped onto her porch, gazing at the old oak tree, she smiled. She remembered the scorching day the cops first harassed her and how, in the darkest hour, her daughter, the legendary CIA operative, answered the call, and that memory, tinged with both pain and triumph, stood as a lasting victory over those who believed they could get away with trampling on the innocent. Thank you for journeying with Bethany and Leonie through a storm of corruption, fear, and resilience. Their story reminds us that even in the face of overwhelming power and injustice, the human spirit can triumph when guided by love and unwavering resolve. We hope their courage and tenacity have inspired you to stand up for what's right no matter the odds. If you found meaning in this story, please take a moment to support our channel. Hit the like button, share this video with friends and family who need a dose of inspiration, and subscribe for more riveting tales of justice and heroism. Your engagement helps us continue bringing you stories that shine a light on hidden truths and celebrate the power of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Stay vigilant, stay hopeful, and remember, real change often begins with just one brave voice.